Charlotte and Alan found themselves sharing a bed once again. Alan apologized to Charlotte, admitting that their pretense of being a couple had only complicated things further. Charlotte reassured him, indicating that she wasn't bothered by the situation at all. Alan's heart raced as he remembered their previous night together at the You-Know-Ha Inn. To calm himself, he attempted to use the deadly down spell to fall asleep quickly, just as he had done during their previous stay. However, his efforts were in vain, as the bed they were using was enchanted to resist magic. This particular bed had special features that could only be controlled by one person. Meanwhile, behind the walls of the room, Aruka and Gosetsu anxiously awaited the unfolding events of this long night. Alan struggled to relax and sleep, feeling nervous and unsure of what to do. Charlotte tried to engage him in conversation, praising the close-knit nature of his family. However, Alan felt that such closeness could be burdensome, especially since it seemed to threaten his future by forcing him to conform to his parents' wishes. Charlotte, on the other hand, envied the warmth and intimacy within Alan's family, seeing it as an ideal relationship dynamic. As Alan imagined sharing affectionate moments with Charlotte, using endearing terms and embracing her, he asked if he should treat her as warmly as his parents treated each other. Charlotte, feeling embarrassed, declined his suggestion, pointing out that they were only pretending to be a couple and such familiarity was unnecessary. Charlotte then brought up a question that Alan had left unanswered during their last encounter with Dorothea. Alan struggled to find the words. All he wanted was to see Charlotte every morning, share tea together, watch flowers bloom, and go shopping with her. However, he didn't want to impose his desires on Charlotte, believing that she should be free to live her own life. Similarly, Charlotte found herself unable to express her own desires, wishing only to continue enjoying playful activities with Alan, such as playing cards all night, sharing meals, and exchanging goodnight wishes. She realized that she was merely a guest and shouldn't expect too much. Expressing her feelings might burden Alan, so she chose to keep her desires to herself. Charlotte apologized for her confusing question and urged Alan not to answer. She suggested they sleep early since they had an early start the next day. Meanwhile, behind the wall, Gosetsu informed Aruka that Alan and Charlotte had finally fallen asleep. Aruka, who had been spying on them, felt disappointed that they hadn't done anything, especially since she had prepared an expensive anti-magic bed for them. As Aruka attempted to approach them, Gosetsu stopped her, and their loud conversation disturbed Lizelot in the adjacent room. Annoyed, Lizelot threw a fork in their direction, reprimanding them for being so noisy. The next morning, they woke up early, still feeling groggy. They were getting ready to meet Natalia. Alan used the shape-shift spell to change Charlotte's appearance. Charlotte's new look, with black hair and glasses, suited her very well. Alan was quite pleased with it. Lu and Gosetsu commented that Charlotte's new appearance seemed to cater to Alan's personal taste. Hearing this, Alan scolded them. The school bell rang, signaling that class was about to begin. Alan and Charlotte walked around the places Natalia frequented. Eventually, they found Natalia with her subordinates. Alan approached Natalia and greeted her. Natalia's response was swift. She immediately checked on her friend's position and assumed a combat stance. Her subordinates also closed ranks, ready to face Alan. Introducing himself as a temporary substitute teacher, Alan mentioned his full name, Alan Crawford. Natalia inquired about Alan's relation to the school's headmaster, noting their shared surname. Trembling, her subordinates revealed that Alan was a notorious troublemaker feared since the academy's inception. They recounted tales of professors and hundreds of students challenging him, only to be defeated effortlessly. They also mentioned Alan's title as the Demon King, who once engaged in a 3-day, 3-night battle with the headmaster, resulting in a mountain's destruction. Alan smiled thinly, seemingly pleased with the accolades from Natalia's associates. Alan then introduced Charlotte as his assistant, referring to her as Charo. Charlotte greeted them as well. Natalia questioned the reason Alan and his assistant sought her out. While the headmaster wanted Alan to discipline troublesome students like himself, Alan hoped Natalia would consider him as a personal tutor. However, Natalia declined, stating she had no need for it, and asked Alan not to bother her. Subsequently, Natalia and her entourage left Alan and Charlotte behind. Charlotte felt delighted to have had the chance to chat and meet Natalia. She was also grateful for mustering the courage to do so, despite the indifferent reception. Alan tried to console Charlotte, suggesting that in the future, their interactions might evolve beyond mere conversations. They could potentially play, eat, and even argue together. Just imagining it made Charlotte tear up emotionally. In fact, she cried so loudly that it drew the attention of the people around them. When the class began, the professor was writing a summary of the formulas for the applied science of the 5 elemental magics on the blackboard. Natalia sat at the back, and Alan and Charlotte approached and sat beside her. Alan was curious to see how Natalia would respond to the lesson inside the classroom. Being highly intelligent, Natalia pointed out an error in the formula the professor had written in front of the class. The professor acknowledged the mistake and apologized. Natalia displayed a deep understanding of magical studies, and Alan complimented her. However, with a hint of arrogance, Natalia told Alan she didn't like his praise. Charlotte, too, looked on with admiration, admitting she didn't understand the subject matter at all. Alan reminded Natalia that Charlotte was still an apprentice assistant and asked if she could give Charlotte a brief lesson. Initially reluctant, Natalia was swayed when Charlotte herself made the request. After receiving a short tutorial on magic from Natalia, Charlotte expressed her gratitude. Curious, Natalia asked Charlotte about her motivation to learn magic. Charlotte shared that she had always been protected by Alan and others. Feeling that she shouldn't rely on them forever, she wanted to become stronger to face any challenge. Natalia was intrigued by Charlotte's statement about being prepared to face any challenge. Charlotte continued, expressing her eagerness to practice the lightning spell that Natalia had just taught her. Recognizing the complexity of the lightning spell, Natalia reassured Charlotte that she could always turn to her if she encountered any difficulties. She would be happy to explain it again. Charlotte was grateful for Natalia's offer and thanked her warmly. Gosetsu and Fu approached Alan and Charo, carrying a packed meal sent by Liz. Charo accepted the meal, expressed her gratitude, and then hugged Fu and Gosetsu. Everyone was stunned by the sight, including Natalia. She wondered who Charo really was and why rare monsters like Fenrir and Hellish Capybara would follow her. Being a monster handler herself was already impressive, so why bother learning magic? They had lunch in the cafeteria. Seeing Natalia's unbalanced meal, Charo offered to get her a salad. Natalia, puzzled by Charo's gesture, found her behavior odd. Alan explained that Charo came from a village and had a younger sister around Natalia's age, which made her see Natalia as a younger sister figure. Natalia wanted to make sure Alan wasn't sent by the Evans family. She deeply despised her own family, describing her parents as arrogant and selfish, and even referred to the Evans family as trash. One of her reasons for seriously studying magic was to distance herself from her family. She believed that with magic, she could handle many challenges on her own. Alan mentioned having read about Natalia's elder sister, Charlotte, in the newspaper. Natalia's response was one of annoyance, indicating she didn't want to discuss that article. Fortunately, Alan brought it up while Charo was away fetching the salad. Otherwise, she would have felt guilty hearing about it. Natalia got up from her lunch table when her friend, Chris, approached with his group. Chris was arrogant and tried to provoke her, but Natalia paid him no mind. Irritated, Chris and his friends left her. Suddenly, one of Chris' friends intentionally bumped into Charo, causing her to drop her salad. Despite Charo's apology, the friend scolded her, telling her not to obstruct Chris's path. Hearing the commotion, Natalia intervened, kicking Chris's friend away. She detested such immoral behavior. Chris, angered by Natalia's actions against his friend, challenged her to a duel. However, Alan restrained Natalia, reminding her that fighting in the cafeteria was inappropriate. Natalia was surprised. Wasn't Charo Alan's assistant? Why was Alan silent when his assistant was harmed? As Charo tried to defuse the situation, it became apparent that Alan wasn't as Natalia had presumed. Charo sensed an impending danger and, with a cunning smile, Alan snapped his fingers, creating a vacuum space. Chris instructed his friends to defeat the one who had cast the barrier spell. As they approached Alan, he stood beside Natalia, teaching her the essentials of a fight. Cut off the enemy's escape route, ensure none escape, and most importantly, crush their fighting spirit so they won't challenge again. Charo had tried to stop the fight earlier. Alan unleashed a massive magic force, ready to release it. Suddenly, a lightning spell disrupted him. Charlotte had applied what Natalia taught her, stopping Alan's power. She yelled for them to stop fighting, emphasizing its inappropriateness. Charlotte scolded Alan and Natalia severely, making a meal. While Charlotte appreciated their protective anger, she felt they went overboard. Alan and Natalia apologized, promising not to repeat their actions. Charlotte smiled and went to play with Fu and Gosetsu. Natalia was taken aback. Alan had suspected Charlotte would use that magic, and this experience would boost her confidence. She didn't expect Charlotte not only to counter his spell, but also to lecture them. The once physically weak girl was growing stronger. Natalia felt a mix of emotions seeing Alan smile at Charlotte. Remembering Charlotte's advice against fighting, she sighed. Alan learned that Natalia had been fighting out of necessity. Initially, she fought to protect the weak but ended up forming a group, making many resent her. Natalia was surprised Alan knew all this. She had wanted to hone her skills at the academy, becoming stronger. Chris, initially her training partner, constantly challenged her, leading to growing animosity. Alan understood the core issue. Natalia had assumed Alan would encourage her to reconcile with Chris. However, Alan suggested the opposite. Natalia needed to assert her dominance at the Magic Academy.